Well, good day and welcome to another session of Grade 11 Mathematical Literacy. Now, don't run away. If you're in grade 12 or grade 10, you just stay put, because there's so much you can learn from the grade 11 syllabus. Because I remember, grade 12s, your syllabus includes grade 11 work as well as the grade 12 work. Okay, so you can't suddenly say, oh, that's for grade 11, it doesn't apply to me. Of course it applies to you. And grade 10s, if you're watching, don't you dare go away either. You sit where you are, because there are a number of little important facts that you can pick up that can help you with your grade 10 exam as well. All right, so in this whole series now, we've been looking at different topics. And we've been analyzing those topics. We've been doing problems associated with the with those topics. So, for example, we've looked at graph work. We've looked at area problems and volume, and we've looked at perimeters. We've looked at finance problems. So we've looked at all these different subjects. What we're going to do today is we're going to take all those subjects and consolidate it into what's expected from you in an exam paper. Now, in the previous session, what we did was we looked at the types of questions you could get in a paper 1. Well, today, in this session, we are going to look at what does a paper 2 look like. And that's what this is all about. Paper 2 problems. So in this session, we'll focus on skills you need to complete a paper 2 examination. Now, let's have a look at this. The learning outcome allocations. Now, for this exam paper, there are 4 different sections. Okay? And you've learned 4 different sections throughout the year. So there's learning outcome 1, where we look at numbers and operations and context. Learning outcome 2, where we look at functional relationships. And that's a huge mathematical word. I don't like it at all. Basically, they're saying we're looking at graph work. Okay? LO3, we're looking at space, shape, and measurement. That was when we were looking at perimeters and volumes and areas. And then LO4, data handling, which involves your statistics and your probability. But here's the point I'm going to stress here. If you look at the allocation, you will see that each LO counts 25%. So guys, like I said, for paper 1, the same principle applies in paper 2. You cannot say, hey, I didn't quite understand graph work, so I'm not going to learn that part, and hopefully we won't get many questions on that. Well, I got bad news for you. You're going to get 25% of your papers going to be on that section, because 25% is based on every single section. 25% LO1, 25% LO2, LO3 and LO4. Okay? You can't get away from it, folk. You've got to know all your work. Happy? Now, let's take it a step further and look at this. We have thinking levels. Now, in paper 1, we had level 1 and level 2. And level 1, 60% of our paper 1 was level 1 type of questions, and 40% was level 2. We had no level 3 and we had no level 4 type questions. But paper 2, things begin to change. Let's look at this. Level 1. Oh my giddy aunt, there is no level 1. That's because you get no level 1 type questions in your paper 2. In other words, by the time you write paper 2, we expect you to have the skills in place. We tested those skills in paper 1. We're not going to test them again. Now we start testing if you know how to apply those different skills. So let's have a look. Level 1, we say there's nothing. Level 2, applying routine procedures in familiar context, 20% of the paper. Level 3, applying multi-step procedure in a variety of context, 40%. So let's just explain that. Level 2 are familiar contexts. So it's going to be things that you would have seen throughout the year. We're going to test you on certain things. And you're going to look at it and say, gee, I remember we had a question similar to that during the year. Level 3 now, we start taking you out of your comfort zone. And we start testing you on things you may not quite have seen before. And we're saying, can you still apply the skills you've learned to new contexts? Okay? And level 3 is also multi-stepped. In other words, we're not just going to ask you, calculate the volume of this, and you're going to say volume equals length times breadth times height equals, there's the answer. You're going to have to do a number of steps to get to that final answer. And level 4, reasoning and reflecting, 40%. So in that question, they could ask you, or in that type of level questioning, they could ask you, do you think the volume would change if we change the radius of the cylinder? Show you're working to prove your answer. Do you think that if I pay more tax, my salary's gone up? Okay? Explain your answer by showing certain calculations. So now, not only do we have to know the skills, we got to apply it and then take it a step further and justify your reasoning by means of calculations. Okay? So this paper, yes, this is hard, but it's fun. And if you know how to work with your skills, it's going to be all right. Now, I want to give you a big hint for this paper 2. In paper 2, you're going to come across problems that are huge, okay? Sometimes you might get a question for 7, 8, 9, maybe even 12 marks, and you look at this question and you say, oh my giddy aunt, where do I start? Guys, break up the question into tiny little chunks, okay? I work for a headmaster who says, if you want to eat an elephant, you've got to take one bite at a time. Okay? You can't open your jaw and swallow the whole thing. It's not going to work. Just one little bite at a time. And eventually, you would have eaten the entire elephant. And the same with a problem. If you see a problem that comes up in your maths paper 2, and it's huge, and it's long, and it's complicated, break it up. Do a little bit here, do a little bit there, and eventually, by doing all those bits, you're going to turn around and say, hey, I've solved the problem. Okay, so let's move on now. Here we go. Our very first question of the day. Mr. Kasambali, aged 42, and that's obviously important because they've told us for a reason, earns a gross salary, the salary before any deductions are made, of 22,500 Rand a month. From his salary, an amount of 1,625 Rand is deducted for his medical aid and UIF, in other words, his unemployment insurance fund. And that amounts to 225 Rand. And a further 7.5% of his gross salary is deducted in order to contribute towards his pension. Right, now let's work this out. So, we know that our buddy over here earns a salary of 22,500 Rand a month. Okay, do you remember that? There it is, 22,500 a month. We also calculated that we've got to take off some money. And how much money did we have to take off? We had to take off his deductions of 3,537,50. Okay, so let's go back and take that off. So we're going to say, right, that's a salary. We're subtracting 3,537,50 cents. Okay. So what's his monthly taxable salary? Remember, we're not going to tax him on those deductions. So let's do this. We take out our calculator and we say, let's go. 22,500. We're going to subtract 3,537 Rand and 50 cents. And that is going to leave us then with an amount of 18,962 Rand 50. So let's write that down straight away. 18,962 Rand 50. So guys, let's explain this again. Although I'm earning 22,500 Rand a month, sure, wouldn't that be nice, eh? After deductions, so after paying my pension, after paying my medical aid, after paying the UIF, I actually only earn a salary of 18,962 Rand and 50 cents. So as far as the government's concerned, they're only going to tax me on that 18,962 Rand and 50 cents. They're going to say, you don't earn 22,500. You're a nice guy. You want to look after yourself when you're old. You want to look after your own medical aid, and you're making sure money's put aside in case that horrible boss of yours fires you. Okay, so that's what I earn. But that's what I earn every month. So if we look at our tax table again, what is it? Our tax table is based on an annual amount. I've calculated our taxable monthly. Before I look at annual, we've got to make sure that we change this to annual. How are we going to change it to annual? Well, if that's what I earn a month, how much am I going to earn a year? So I say to myself, how many months are in a year? And there are 12. So it makes sense that all I got to do is multiply that by 12. With my calculator again, I've got the 18,962 Rand 50 there ready. I'm going to multiply it by 12, and I'm going to land up with an answer of 227,550 Rand. So I've got, when I get a pen, there she is, I've got an annual salary of 227,550 Rand. Yes, like that's a lot of money, eh? You can actually go out and buy yourself a car for cash. Unfortunately, though, there are a whole lot of hidden details. Like if you're married, guys, half of that just goes away, okay? So we got 227,550 Rand. That's what the government say I earn every year. Let's look at my tax table. My tax table now is saying, okay, so if I earn 227,000, where does that fit in? Can you see it's going to fit in right over here? Okay, I'm earning between 195,000 and 270,000. So how much tax am I going to pay? Well, according to this, I'm going to start off straight away by paying 40,210 Rand. So let's go here. And we're going to say, okay, so my tax is starting off with 40,210 Rand. Plus what? Plus 30% of every amount above 195,000. So we're going to say, okay, so I'm also got to add to this amount 30%, okay, of an amount above 195,000. Well, if I earn 227,550, let's subtract the 195,000 to see how much more I'm earning than 195,000. So I've got 40,210 Rand, plus I'm wanting to add 30% of every cent above 195,000 I earn. So we're going to take this amount then of 227,550, we're subtracting 195,000, and we land up with 32,550. So times 32,550. Okay. So not only am I being charged 40,000, but every Rand that I earn above 195,000 Rand, they take off 30 cents. 30%. 30 cents off every Rand. That's a horrific amount of money. Okay? Let's go on. So now we can calculate this and saying, right, I've got 40,210 Rand plus 30% of this amount of money, 32,550. We got that on our calculator. Times 30% equals 9,765 Rand. Let's write that down. 9,765 765 Rand. So how much tax am I paying? I'm paying the 40,210 Rand plus the 9,765 Rand. So let's just add that. Plus the 40,210 Rand, and my total taxable amount is 49,975 Rand. That's how much money I've got to give to the tax man. But hold on, it's not all bad news. There's some good news. Do you remember right in the beginning we read this question, and I said here that this little friend of ours was aged 42. Why did we need to know that? Let's look at our tax table here. We have something called a rebate. Now, what's a rebate? Well, it tells us rebates are fixed amounts deductible from tax payable according to the tax tables and are only applicable to individuals. This means that once the tax has been calculated, an amount of either 8,280 Rand or 13,320 Rand needs to be deducted. So the tax man is going to say, we've worked out your tax, but we're not taking all that money. We are going to take some money away from what you owe us. And here's where the age comes in. If you're under 65, we got to give you a rebate of 8,280 Rand. What a fantastic government. They're saying, if you're under 65, we're going to give you 8,280 Rand. There it is for you. Happy birthday. What a great country to live in. Okay? If you're 65 years or older, then they're going to give you 13,320 Rand back. I can't wait to get to 65 just so that I can get that extra money back. So let's go back to our problem. And our problem now was this. This is our taxable amount, but because I am under the age of 65, remember our buddy was 42 or 43, government are going to say, we're going to give you 8,280 Rand. So, what is my taxable amount? Let's have a look. We've got the 49,975 Rand. We're going to subtract the 8,280 Rand, and we're going to land up with an amount of 41,695 Rand. I'm going to put that in like a luminous pink because it's such a wonderful answer. 41,695 Rand. That's the tax I pay every single year. Okay, now, I want us to look at this question because it says here how much tax he needs to pay on his salary. All right, so, and it's asking us to determine the annual tax. Now, folk, we've worked out the annual tax. So every year he's paying back 41,695. In matric, and even in grade 11, we could take it a step further and say, what's his monthly tax that he's paying? Sure. Well, if that's what he's paying every year, to determine how much he's paying every month, we're going to now just divide that by 12. So if we divide that by 12 now, we're going to say, I've got the 41,695, dividing it by 12, and my answer now works out to being 3,474 Rand. 34, let's just double check, 3474, 3474, comma, 583, so we're going to round it to 58. Now, folk, again, why are we rounding to 2 decimal places? We're rounding to 2 decimal places because we're dealing with money. And when we deal with money, we know it's always rands and cents, and there are 100 cents. So it's got to be those 2 decimal places. So that's the amount of money, 3,474 Rand and 58 cents. That's what I'm paying for tax every single month. Oh my goodness. Imagine if you had an extra 41,695 Rand in your pocket every year. That would be fantastic. But the problem then is, we wouldn't have very good roads. We wouldn't have very good public hospitals. Okay? We wouldn't be able to help out the old folk. We wouldn't be able to pay for our teachers and for our schools. Our country would be in a bit of a mess, a bit of a shambles if we never paid tax. So there's a good reason we pay tax. Okay? Even though when you get your paycheck and you say, hey, what's happened to all this amount? Okay? And although we may be depressed when we get our paycheck, in the long run, guys, it's for our country. Okay, so that was the question. We have looked at it in a lot of detail. This, guys, would definitely be a level 3, level 4 type question. I mean, this was like, oh my goodness, we had to really work so hard and we really had to think about it. Okay, so let's move on now. Our next question, question 2. Mr. Kane started a business making and selling traditional sandals of different types. He employs a number of workers to help him make these sandals. Type A and type B. Now, they make 2 types of sandals, a type A and a type B, as shown above. They cut up old car tires to make the sandals and decorate them by carving patterns into the strips of tire. Oh my goodness, that's a phenomenal thing to think of. Okay, so instead of taking an old tire and just turfing it, and you know, rubber just it's really difficult to get rid of, these guys are saying, let's use these old tires and do something with them. We're going to make sandals out of them. And we got 2 different types, a type A and a type B. Now, let's have a look here. Question A. One worker takes 4 hours to make 1 pair of type A and 5 hours to make 1 pair of type B sandals. So here is a table and it says one worker takes 4 hours to make a sandal A and one worker takes 5 hours to make a sandal B. Now, use the above table to calculate the missing values of P and Q. So we've got to find out that value and we've got to find out that value. Now I want to stop here for a minute and just draw your attention to this problem. Okay. So many times up to this point we've dealt with graphs that are straight lines. Okay. Now we're dealing with a paper 2, and chances are there could be a different type of graph, and this is one of those type. So we got to really think. Okay, so I have a worker and he takes 4 hours to make 1 sandal. Now what would happen if I got 2 workers and I said, you 2 are working together, make that sandal? Now is it going to take longer or is it going to take shorter? Well, hopefully it's going to take a much shorter time, okay? Because there are 2 people doing the job of 1 person. So 1 person took 4 hours. How long 2 people going to take? Obviously, half the time. So it's going to take them 2 hours. So 2 people are going to take 2 hours to make the 1 sandal, okay? If 1 person took 5 hours to make type B, 2 people are going to do it in half the time, 2.5 hours. Now what happens if it takes 4 hours for 1 person and now we bring in 4 people? It should cut that time down 4 times. So instead of taking 4 hours, it should take us 1, and that's exactly what our table shows us. Now, how are we getting these? Look here. If I say 4 divided by 1, I get 4. 4 divided by 2, I get 2. 4 divided by 4, I get 1. Now, 4 divided by what gives me 0.8? In other words, 0.8 times what is going to give me 4? And it's going to work out to being 5. 5 people are going to take 0.8 hours, and we'll worry about how many minutes that is later on, but 5 people are going to take 0.8 hours to make that sandal. 8 people are going to take 0.5 hours, in other words, half an hour to make 1 sandal. So the more people we have working on in our factory, the quicker it's going to take to make a pair of sandals. And that kind of should make sense to you. Right, now, use the table to calculate those values. We've done that. let's move on. It now says, use the above table to draw two graphs on the grid provided. Clearly label your graphs. Okay, so when we look at that, we are going to draw our own grid, and let's do that. So I've got a grid now. There it is. And I'm going to say, right, I've got 1 person, 2 people, 4 people, and here we said 5 people and 8 people. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and we're going to say these are our people. Then we're going to look at our hours, and our hours need to go as high as 5. So let's do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is my hours. Now, folk, when we draw our graphs, normally in an exam, you'll be given a set of axes, okay? However, you will still have to put the labels on those set of axes, or you could be asked to. If an examiner is feeling in a very generous mood, they might give you all those figures on the side and all the figures on the bottom that you require. But sometimes you might just get a blank set of axes, and the examiner says, "Oi, you do everything by yourself, pal." So I've got to remember the following. I've got to write down what these numbers represent, and they represent my hours. What do these represent? They represent the number of people. And I've got to label my graph, and my graph is going to be the number of hours per person, okay, or the number of hours it takes to complete making 1 pair of sandals. Now we're going to work with 2 types of graph. First one I'm going to do in green, and that's our graph A. And we said this, that 1 person is going to take 4 hours, and I'm going to plot that down there. 2 people, we're going to take 2 hours. 4 people, we're going to take 1 hour, and finally 8 people, we're going to take half an hour. Now when you look at these dots on the screen, you're going to say to yourself, there's a problem here. And my problem is that those dots are not all in one straight line. In fact, I've got a weird kind of graph here, okay? And my graph is actually in this kind of shape. Now you need to understand that I'm doing this on a very funny little screen, so my graph won't be 100% accurate. But that's my graph. So it's got a funny kind of curve to it. Okay, what do we call this kind of graph? We call it an inverse graph. In other words, there's no relation, there's no constant increase. It's changing all the time. That was graph 1. Now let's look at graph 2. And again, I'm going to change it to a different color, and I think what we need to do is let's use orange on this one. Now, 1 person takes 5 hours for this graph. 2 people take 2.5 hours. Okay, sorry, let me just draw that there. Right, we said 4 people we're going to take 1.25 hours, 5 people take 1 hour. Now let's plot this graph as well. And again, this kind of graph has also got a funny little curve to it. Can you see that? Okay. Now I know what you're thinking there. You're sitting at home saying, why has that guy on the TV made a dotted line? Why has he not made one continuous line? Well, it's quite simple. If I make a continuous line, it means that I can plot any point along that line. So I could say it takes 1.5 people so long to make a pair of sandals. Now, folk, you can't get 1.5 people, okay? Even if the guy doesn't have arms and doesn't have legs, he's still a person. He's not half a person. Maybe physically he's half, but emotionally he's a whole person. So you can't take it half a person. Now, if I drew it as a solid line, what I'd be saying to you is this, that you can get 1.5 people, or here's even better, you can get 1.1 of a person, okay? Now, it's impossible to get 1.1 of a person, no matter how thick that person may be. We're not looking at their mental ability here, we're looking at the person as a human being. It's one person and 2 people and 3 people. They're not bits of people. If I drew a solid line, I'd be telling you, you can find bits of people. Do we understand that? Okay, so when we look at those graphs, that's what our graph is going to kind of look like. Are we happy with that? Okay. It's not the normal type of graph you normally get when you write a mathematical literacy paper. Normally we always get these wonderful straight lines or flat lines. Now suddenly we've got these weird curved lines. Let's move on. Our next question says this. Identify the type of proportion represented by the graphs in the last question. In other words, what type of graphs are they? They inversely proportional. Okay? So in other words, instead of saying we got a constant gradient, we actually don't have a constant gradient at all. Okay? And we're starting up here and we're ending down there. Right, let's move on. Mr. Kane employs 4 workers in his business. Jabu, who's the supervisor, is paid 11 Rand 25 an hour. The rest of the workers receive 80% of Jabu's hourly rate. Workers work 40 hours per week. Mr. Kane allows his workers to work overtime. Overtime is paid at a rate of time and a half. Determine how much Mr. Kane would pay in total for wages for a normal 40-hour week. Okay, now do you remember in the beginning of the session I said to you that sometimes we get a question and we look at this question and we just want to say, I don't know where to start, and we turn over and go to the next one. Okay, now this is one of those type. This is a question where you look at it and you just want to go, how do I do this? I hate my maths lit teacher. Okay, let's break it up and do little bits at a time. First thing, Jabu earns 11 Rand 25 every hour. The rest of the workers receive 80% of Jabu's hourly rate. So let's do this. Let's find out what is 80%, and it's 80 over 100, of Jabu's salary. And his salary was 11 Rand 25. Now guys, you all know how to do that. You all know that 80 over 100 times 11.25. You can all do that. And you know what? Just by me putting that down already, I've got a mark. Now please take note, this is for quite a few marks. It's for a total of 6 marks. So I'm just doing little bits and pieces, and hopefully I'm picking up marks as I go along. So how much does each of the other workers earn an hour? 80% of 11.25. So we're going to say, right, we have 80%, so it's 80 over 100 of, meaning times, 11 Rand 25 equals 9 Rand. So all the other workers, shame man, they only earn 9 Rand an hour, and Jabu, who's the supervisor, he earns a whacking 11 Rand 25. Okay, so we've started somewhere with this problem. Okay, huge jumble of information, and we're just taking bits. Let's look for another bit we might find useful. Okay, workers work 40 hours per week. Okay, so if the workers work 40 hours, Jabu we know earns 11 Rand 25, and he's working for 40 hours. Okay, so with our calculator then, we're going to say, right, we have 11 Rand 25, and we're going to multiply that by 40 hours. Let's just do that again, 40 hours, and Jabu earns 450 Rand a week. Okay, I think this employee should be taken off to court because he's not paying his workers very well at all. Jabu earns 450 Rand a week. Okay, now what do the other workers earn? Well, do you remember we said each worker earns 9 Rand and they're going to work for 40 hours. But how many other workers are there? Well, we were told that Mr. Kane employs 4 workers. One of them is Jabu. Okay, so how many does that leave us? leaves us with 3. So he's got 9 rand per hour for 40 hours, but there are 3 of the workers. So we are going to say, I have 9 rand for every hour, and I'm going to work 40 hours. That's for 1 worker. But I've got 3 workers, and it's 1,080 rand. So 1,080 rand. Now, let's go back to the question. The question is, determine how much Mr. Kane would pay in total for wages for a normal 40-hour week. So we've worked out what Jabu's salary is, we've worked out what the other 3, well, what's the total then? Okay, the total is going to be the 450 plus the 1080. So we're going to say 1080 plus the 450, and we get an answer of 1,530. So it's 1,530 rand. That's what Mr. Kane is going to pay out every single week to his 4 workers. That's if they don't work any overtime, hey? That's just our normal 40-hour week. Okay, so every week 1,530 rand goes towards wages. Now guys, now that we've done that problem, you know what, it wasn't that hard, was it? When we read all this information, it was like everything hitting our brain at the same time. Okay? Didn't know what was going on. But when we broke it up into tiny little bites, we were able to solve it. Okay? And guys, I've got to emphasize that again. For your paper 2, when you get all this kind of information in a question, just break it up, because you're going to get little mark here, a mark there, a mark there, a mark there, and before long, you've got a whole lot of marks. Okay, let's move on, because I'm sure there's another question about Mr. Kane and Jabu. Here it goes. Mr. Kane, Jabu worked 48 hours in 1 week. Calculate how much he earned. Now, let's have a look at that. A normal working day, a week, is 40 hours. So if I take the 48 hours, and I subtract the 40 hours, which is a normal week, I'm left with 8 hours. So Mr. Jabu has actually worked 8 hours more than he should have. Now I want to tell you a little story about Jabu. Jabu may seem a nice guy, but you know what? He's actually not. He's not going to work 8 hours without being paid for it. Okay? He's going to work the 8 hours, and at the end of the week, when Mr. Kane comes to pay him, he's going to say, hey, luister boss, listen meneer, listen boss, I worked an extra 8 hours, you better pay me for that. Okay? And Mr. Kane's going to say, of course I'll pay you. Why? Because I'm a nice boss. All bosses are great. They pay you loads of money. So we got 8 hours, and those 8 hours we're going to pay him. Now, how much does Jabu get every hour? Let's have a look at this. He gets 11 rand 25 an hour. So we've got 8 hours. He's being paid 11 rand 25. But Jabu says, no, wait. This is extra time, pal. You're going to pay me extra money. I've taken 8 hours away from my family this week. And I haven't done that just for 11 rand 25. I want to get a special rate. And the boss says, again, wonderful boss, no problem, we'll give it to you. Okay? So the way it works out is this. He allows the workers to work overtime, and overtime is paid at a rate of time and a half. What does that mean? That means we give him his 11 rand 25 for the hour plus an extra half of that amount. So his overtime amount is not only the 11 rand 25, but also half of the 11 rand 25. So how much is he busy being paid? Well, let's go to our calculator and do it. We are going to say, right, 11.25 times a half, okay? And we land up then with 5 rand 62.5. Now that's a problem. Why is it a problem? Because we're dealing in rands and cents. And when we deal in rands and cents, we can only have 2 decimal places. So it should be 5 rand 62 or 3. Now this is a bit of a dilemma. we're going to have to make it 3 because we've got to round up. We can't let Jabu go without. So it's 5 Rand 63. So 5 Rand 63 plus the 11 Rand 25. So let's get out our calculator again, and we're going to say, so he gets 11 Rand 25 plus the 5 Rand 63, and it works out to being 16 Rand 88. So Jabu now is getting 16 Rand 88. Let's just confirm that. Indeed he is. Okay? So that's how much money he's getting paid for every hour of overtime he does. So let's go back to our problem here. He's got 8 hours, and we're going to pay him 16 Rand 88 for those 8 hours. So how much is he going to get paid? We're going to multiply that by 8, and he's going to get an amount of 135 Rand and 4 cents. So 135 Rand and 4 cents is what we're paying him for his overtime. But do you remember that for just working 1 week, he got paid, let's look for it, what did he get paid? 450 Rand. So not only is he getting that, but he's also getting the initial 450 Rand for his normal 40-hour week. This guy's making money here, hey? There might be something into working overtime. It's a pity my boss doesn't pay overtime. Okay, so it's 135 Rand and 4 cents plus 450 Rand. So let's go for it. So we've got that plus the 450. He gets a total amount of 585 Rand and 4 cents. So 585 Rand and 4 cents. That's how much Jabu's going to get paid for working those extra 8 hours in the week. Okay. Right, there's another question. Mr. Kane kept a record of the number of pairs of each type of sandal sold over a 12-day period. Now, he calculated the lower quartile, the upper quartile, and the median for each set of data and recorded them as follows. Okay, so the lower quartile, the median, and the upper quartile. Now I want to stop here for a minute and tell you this. The person who set this test was not a nice person. And the reason why I say that is because in your syllabus, you've just got to know about a lower quartile and what an upper quartile is, but you're not really supposed to be tested on it. So obviously the person that set this test did not like their class very much at all and decided, wait, these boys are being so naughty, or these little girls are being absolutely so mischievous, I'm going to give them a wake-up call, put a question in that's really going to shock their world. Okay? So I'm going to do it, but please understand, you just got to know what these things are, but they won't really be tested as such. So let's have a look at it. Okay, so what is a lower quartile and an upper quartile? Basically this. If I give you a set of numbers, so here, 2, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5, 5, 5, 6, 6, 7. We're just looking at type A. Let's not worry about type B at this stage. Okay, so I'm just going to worry about type A. To calculate the median, remember the median is the middle number. Listen to it. Median, middle. Okay? Middle. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 pieces of information. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. My median is over there. Okay? In other words, 4 plus 5 is 9. Divided by 2 is 4.5. So I have a median of 4.5. Now, the lower quartile, now listen to the word quartile, quarter, okay? So we want to now find the first quarter and the third quarter. How are we going to do that? We're going to pretend that that's the information given to us. So we're going to pretend we've only got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 numbers. And we're going to find the middle of those 6. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 here is our first quartile, quartile 1, or we can call it our lower quartile, and that's going to be 2.5. Let's see if they get that. They do indeed. Now, what is our upper quartile, or our quartile 3? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It's going to be over here, which is going to land up being 5.5. So finding the lower quartile and upper quartile is just like finding a median. But it's like finding the median between the lowest number and the median. And it's like finding the median between the first median and the upper quartile. Okay, got that? Sure, it's confusing. I think that's why they don't test it in the final exams. Right. Now, let's have a look. Use the above table to determine the percentage of the days when the following happens. Now, we are not going to use this table. I'm going to cross it out because you know what? I don't want to confuse you. You're such great guys. We don't want to confuse you, and I'm not going to use that table because quartiles aren't supposed to be examined. But the question says, determine the percentage when less than 2,5 pairs of type A sandals were sold. So let's have a look. When we're less than 2.5, 1, 2, 3 of them. Okay, so we can say 3 of them out of a total of how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 3 of the 12, and we want as a percentage. So we're going to times it by 100. So looking at that then, we're going to say, okay, so I've got 3 over 12, and we're going to times it as a percentage, and we get 25%. So I'm going to land up then with 25% of type A sandals, okay? 25% of the sandals that were sold were less than 2.5. Okay, now, next one. Between 1.5 pairs and 6 pairs of type B sandals were sold. So we got to determine the percentage. So the first thing we've got to do is say, where between how many pairs did I sell that are between 1.5 and 6? Okay, so 1.5 and 6, let's look at it. 1.5, that's not, there's 1. 1.5 and 6, no. 1.5 and 6, yes. 1.5 and 6, no. 1.5 and 6, no. 1.5 and 6, yes. Yes, no, yes, no, yes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we sold 6 pairs out of a total of 12. We're going to times it by 100. We know that's a half, so we know that's going to be 50%. Now, I find this question rather strange. Like I said, first of all, the person who set this was not a nice person, because we're not allowed to ask lower quartile and upper quartile. But then they also say, how many days did we sell between 1.5 pairs and 6? Now, I find that absolutely crazy. Since when are you going to sell 1.5 pairs of shoes? Okay? You ask any woman that question and they will think you've lost their mind. A woman will never buy 1.5 pairs of shoes. They buy at least 3 or 4 or 5 pairs, but never half a pair. Okay, let's move on. Now, our next question. If one of the 12 days is selected at random, calculate the probability that Mr. Kane on that day will sell the following. What's the possibility that he will sell only 3 pairs of type B sandals? So, when has he sold 3 pairs? He sold it here and here. So he sold it on 2 days. Of the how many days? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So 2 of the 12 days. He sold 3 pairs. So what's my probability? It's 2 over 12, which is 1 over 6. Happy? Next one. What's the probability that more than 4 pairs of type A sandals were sold? So let's go up here. Type A, more than 4. Now remember, it's not 4, it's more than 4. In other words, I want 5 or 6 or 7 or 8. Let's have a look. Type A, we're following this line over here. Okay, more than 4. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So it's 6 of the 12 days, which is 1 over 2. Happy? Okay. Great. Time for a new question. Question 3. As a result of load shedding, Wayne, who's a chicken farmer, goes back to using a generator to provide dependable power for his chicken sheds and his farmhouse. He buys a second-hand diesel tank with a radius of 1 meter and a length of 2 meters to store the fuel for the generator. Okay. Do you remember those days, eh? When the electricity used to go off like it was going out of fashion. You'd be sitting watching a program on TV and you're just about to hear who the murderer is and ching, lights out and khati TV, okay? Nothing to watch, right? Or you are so hungry, you get home and you open that microwave and you put in a quick meal and all you need to do is wait 3 minutes and it goes 1.5 minutes and choo, there goes the electricity, no meal. So on behalf of me and myself, I want to thank Eskom for not doing this anymore. Right. The problem is, though, now I'm eating too much. So now we go back to the days when load shedding was happening. And what happens is we have a farmer called Wayne. And Wayne is so worried about his chickens. And, you know, chickens need a certain temperature. They need the lights on, and the eggs need to be incubated. And that incubator has got to have a certain heat. Now, with the electricity going off, on, off, on, off, on, off, and everything else, the poor chickens don't know what's going on, and the little embryo inside the chicken doesn't know whether to, inside the egg rather, doesn't know whether to develop or not. So Wayne comes up with a solution. He says, you know what, I don't need electricity anymore. This has got beyond a joke. I am now going to revert to a generator. But a generator needs diesel. And we've got to put the diesel, or got to store the diesel somewhere. So Wayne gets a diesel tank, and this is what his diesel tank looks like. We told it has a radius of 1 meter, okay, and we told it has a length of 2 meters. Right. Straightforward. There's nothing difficult about this. We all understand it. So here's the first question. He decides to paint both the outside surface area of the tank and the stand on which it rests. The surface area of the stand is 1 meter squared, and it takes 1 liter of paint to paint 3 meters squared of the surface area. Oh, my machis. Guys, this is another question where there's so much information, I'm getting confused before I even start. But what we need to remember is this, that Wayne bought a second-hand diesel tank. So he gets this tank, and obviously he got it at a very good price. That's why he bought it second-hand. But it's in a bit of a shambles. It's in a bit of a mess. And he decides, I've got to paint this whole thing. Not only is he going to paint the tank, but he's also going to paint the stand on which the tank rests. Okay. Now, it's obvious, well, I hope it is, that he's only going to paint the outside of the tank. You're not going to paint the inside. First of all, you're not going to get the brush through the little hole on the top. And second of all, why paint the inside? No one's going to see it. And besides that, the paint's going to mix with the diesel, and then your generator's going to do all kinds of weird and wonderful things. And your little chicken eggs are going to land up hatching as ducklings. And it's going to be a huge mess. So we're only going to paint the outside of my tank. And I think that's understandable. Right. So let's go through this. Obviously then, if that's what we're going to do, I have to find the surface area of that tank. So let's go for it. It says, calculate the surface area of the tank in meters squared. Use the formula. Surface area equals 2 pi r squared plus 2 pi RH, where r is the radius, h is the height, and use pi to being 3,14. Every single session I tell you this, and I'm going to say it again. Guys, the person who set this test has given you a formula. They haven't given you a formula just because they wanted to be all weird and wonderful and add a mystery into the paper. Okay? That's not what Mathslet's about. They've given you the formula because you've got to use it. So we know here's a formula, I'm going to use it. And obviously I'm going to use it because they've given me the formula for the surface area of the tank, and I've got to know that surface area if I've got to know how much I've got to paint. So let's do that. We are going to say, right, my surface area is equal to, and that's the formula we're using, 2 times pi. Now instead of times pi, we told we must use 3,14. times the radius. What was the radius of the tank? It was 1 meter. Hey? So times 1 meter, and we're going to square it. Why? Because the formula tells you to do it. And if the formula tells you to square, then you square. Right, plus 2 times pi, which is 3,14, times the radius, which again we know is 1 meter, times the height. Now I want to look at this, and I'm going to point this out to you, because now we got a little problem here. We got the tank, and we got the length of the tank, but they don't tell us how high the tank is. But folk, if we take this tank and we turn it this way, we've got a height. Okay, so the length of a cylinder could also be interpreted as the height of the cylinder. Got that? Okay, so let's go back, and we're going to say our height now is 2 meters. So times 2 meters. Now all we got to do is we've got to throw all this information into your calculator. So let's do that. I hope I'm going to be able to read all this. Let's go. Okay, so we're going to clear our calculator, and we're going to say I've got 2 times 3.14 multiplied by 1 squared, okay, plus 2 times 3.14 times 1 times 2 equals, voila, there's my answer, 18,84. So I've now got 18,84 meters, what? Meters? Meters squared or meters cubed? Meters squared. Why? Because we're dealing in area, and area is always squared. Okay, so now we've got the surface area of the tank. And that's what it asked us for, and that's what we've done. Let's go on to the next question. The next part of the question says this: calculate the quantity of paint in liters needed to paint both the outside of the tank and the stand. Okay, now remember, it tells us that the surface area of the stand is 1 meter squared. Now I'm glad the examiner told us that, because to calculate the surface area, let's look at the stand. To calculate the surface area of that stand, sure, guys, that wasn't a problem. That would have been a career. Okay, you would have been on that for the next 30 years or so. So the examiner is saying, oi, we've only got a certain time for this exam. Okay, if you're in grade 11, you've only got 2 hours for this exam. If you're in grade 12, you only got 3 hours. We can't allow them to work for the next 55 hours trying to work out the surface area of the stand, so let's give it to them. And he tells us it's 1 meter squared. So let's go back here now and say this. We want to calculate the amount of paint. Before we calculate the amount of paint, let's work out our total surface area. Do you remember in the previous question, we said our surface area was 18,84. So let's write that down there straight away. Okay, we're going to say our surface area is 18,84 meters squared. But that was the surface area for our cylinder, okay, for that tank that's holding the diesel. The examiner told us the surface area for the stand was 1 meter squared. So we're going to add another meter squared. Now guys, I trust you don't need your calculator for this, because 18 plus 1 is 19. Okay, so we got 19,84 meters squared. That's how much area we need to paint. Now let's read this question. It says here, it takes 1 liter paint to paint 3 meters squared. Okay, so we've got 19,84 meters squared. We know that for every 3 meters squared I have, I need a liter. In other words, I'm going to take this 19,84 and divide it by 3 to tell me how many liters I actually need. So let's go here quickly. We've got the 19,84. I'm going to divide that now by 3, and I'll end up with 6,61 liters. So I need 6,61 liters of paint. Right. Now it says round your answer to the nearest liter. Right. That's important, guys, because if I don't do it, I'm going to lose a mark. So I'm going to say 6,61 is equivalent to 7 liters. Right. And I've done that. Sure. So this very, very difficult question is actually making sense. But I'm sure there's more. Let's read on. if a 1 litre tin of paint costs 23 Rand 63, okay, so let's do this. So we know 1 litre is going to cost me 23 Rand 63, and a 5 litre paint costs 113 Rand 15. Calculate the most economical way to purchase the amount of paint needed. Now, how many litres of paint did we need? We needed 7 litres. Do you remember? Now, how can I make up that 7 litres? Well, I can make it up in the following way. We can say 7 litres is the same thing as saying 1 litre times 7. So I can buy 7 1 litre bottles. Or I could say 7 litres is buying 1 5 litre plus buying 2 1 litres. Would you agree on that? Absolutely. Could I buy 2 5 litres? Well, actually no, because then I'm going to have 3 litres too much. Okay? So let's work out the cost of this. And I'm going to change to a different color so you can see our costing here. Okay, let's work luminous pink. Now, 1 litre is saying 1 litre, which cost us 23 Rand 63 times 7. So let's do that. So I've got 23 Rand and 63 cents, times it by 7. If I buy 7 of those 1 litres, it's going to cost me 165 Rand and 41 cents. So we've got 165 Rand and, let's just confirm, 41 cents. Absolutely. Okay. Now, what's it going to cost me if I buy 1 of these 5 litres, which cost 113 Rand 15 cents, plus I buy 2 1 litres, and each 1 litre costs 23 Rand 63. Let's punch that into our calculator. So we're going to say, right, I've got 113 Rand and 15 cents plus 2 times 23 Rand 63 equals, and my final answer is 160 Rand 41 cents. So it's 160 Rand 41 cents. Now, guys, let's look at our answer. Here was one answer, buying 7 1 litre tins, going to cost me 165 Rand and 41 cents. Or, if I buy 1 5 litre and 2 1 litres, it's only going to cost me 160 Rand and 41 cents. Guys, I'm saving 5 Rand. And I need that 5 Rand because after I bought my paint and get into my car, I've got to pay the car guard anyway. Okay, so that's my car guard money. So we're going to buy 1 5 litre and 2 2 litres. Happy? Great. Now, it looks like there's more to it. Calculate the capacity, in other words, the volume of the diesel tank in litres, where 1 metre cubed is equal to 1,000 litres. Use the formula. It's telling you to use it, so we're going to use it. Use the formula that volume is equal to pi times r squared times h, where r is the radius, h is the height, and we're going to use pi as 3,14. Here's our tank. We want to know how much diesel can I put in that tank. Okay, and in order to do that, we want to find the volume of that tank. Just remember, the formula does speak about a height, and if we take our tank and we put it this way, it's going to have a height. But our tank is lying down, but we're still going to pretend that the length is the height. Okay, so let's go for it. We've got volume equals 3,14 times my radius. Remember, my radius was 1 meter. So times 1 meter, not just times 1 meter, but times 1 meter squared. Times the height. What was the height? Well, we were going to use the length, as it were, which is 2 meters. Times 2 meters equals. Right, so let's go. On our calculator, we are saying 3.14 times 1 squared times 2 equals a whopping 6,28 meters squared. So we've got 6,28 meters squared. We haven't answered the question yet, eh? Why? Because the question said how many liters, and we've worked out our answer in meters. Cubed, eh? Not squared, cubed. Did you see that mistake I made? I hope you didn't. But if you did, well, let me tell you what I did. I said that volume was squared, and it's not. Volume is always cubed. Perimeter is in meters, or centimeters, or millimeters. Area is the unit squared, volume the units cubed. Now, if I was writing that final paper and I wrote my answer as 6,28 meters squared, my examiner would have said, fantastic, I caught this guy, I've nailed him, we're taking a mark off. Okay? Be careful. So I've got 6,28 meters cubed. We know for every 1 meters cubed, it's equal to 1,000. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to multiply 6,28 meters cubed by 1,000, and you should be able to do that in your head, but let's do it here anyway. Times 1,000 equals 6,280. 6,280 what? 6,280 liters. Okay? So that's the capacity of my tank, 6,280 liters. Now, the one thing that I'm going to stress here as well is this, that from our paper 1 type questions, do you remember, if you think about paper 1 questions, they were all little questions, hey? Here's a bit, here's a bit, here's a bit, here's a question, here's a question. With paper 2, we give you one scenario, and there are a whole lot of questions based on that scenario. So let's go through it. We had the tank. Okay, and with that tank, we had to then calculate how much it was actually going to cost us to paint that. All right, so we had to calculate the surface area of the tank. We had to add the surface area of the tank to the surface area of the stand. We then had to work out the surface area of both those things, then how much paint was required, then how much the paint was going to cost us. Now we're looking at volume, and we've had to work out the volume of that tank. In other words, how much diesel can fit into the tank. Sure, that's a lot of questions based on one scenario, hey? Let's move on. Okay, there's another question, and this says, Farmer Wayne fills the diesel tank to 80% of its capacity. Okay, so Farmer Wayne doesn't want to fill this tank right up to the brim. He's only filling it 80%. Okay, so before we go any further, let's work that out. We're going to say, well, what is 80% of the full tank? Now, do you remember what the full tank was? The full tank was 6,280 liters. So 80% of 6,280 liters. So let's work that out straight away. And I'm going to say, okay, cool, I've got the 6,280. I'm going to multiply that by 80%. Equals 5,024 liters. So we've got 5,024 liters. That's how much diesel Farmer Wayne has put inside our tank. 5,024 liters. My Gideon, if you've seen the cost of diesel lately, you will know that Farmer Wayne has a whack of money. Because if 1 litre of diesel is over 10 Rand up here in Gauteng, imagine what he's paying for that 5,024 litres. He's paying more than 50,000 Rand to fill that tank. I'm going to find Farmer Wayne. He's going to be my friend. Obviously, he's got a lot of money. Okay, so that's how much diesel fits in the tank. Now, the generator, we told, uses 72 litres of diesel in 36 hours. Calculate the amount of diesel in liters remaining in the tank after 7 days of the generator running continuously. Okay, so we know he uses, and I'm going to change to a different color, 72 liters, and he uses that in 36 hours. Okay, in fact, let's do it this way. 36 hours, and that's this, he uses 72 liters. So what does he use in 1 hour? Well, if we take the 72 liters and we divide it by 36, we will see that in 1 hour, that generator uses 2 liters of diesel. Okay, now we asked, how much do you think he's going to use in 7 days? All right, so here we go. 1 hour is equal to 2 liters of diesel. He's now got 7 days. Now I have a problem because, let's look here, I'm going to write it and then I'm going to rub it out. 1 hour, 7 days. There's a problem. My problem is my units. I'm dealing with hours and now suddenly I'm dealing with days. Okay, can't do that, guys. That's a big no-no. Okay. Early on we had a problem where we had centimeters and meters and millimeters, and we said no, that's no good, change everything to the same unit. Same here. Okay, you got hours, now we got days. Let's change this day to hours. So if there's 7 days and if there are 24 hours in a day, how many hours in 7 days? Well, it's obvious. It's going to be 7 times 24. So we're going to say 7 times 24, and we're going to get an answer of 168. So I know I've got 168 hours. If there's 168 hours and every hour uses 2 liters of diesel, obviously in 168 hours, I'm going to multiply it by 2 liters. 1 hour, 2 liters. 168 hours is 168 times 2 liters. Okay? Equals, and again, 168 times 2 equals 336. So I've got 336 liters of diesel which I've used. But I haven't answered the question. Let's go back. And let's stop here for a minute and let's just talk about this. When you've finished your question, go back and read it, okay? So once I've answered something, go back, read the question and say, is my answer actually the answer to the question, okay? So what have I worked out? I've worked out that we've used 336 liters in 7 days. But the question says, calculate the amount of diesel in liters remaining in the tank. Okay, so we've got how many liters in our tank? 5,024. Again, let's use a different color now because we're on a different part of that sum. So I've got 5,024 liters in the tank. I've used 336 liters. How many are remaining in the tank? So we've got 5,024 liters, we're subtracting 336 liters, and I got 4,688. 4,688 liters left in the tank. That's quite encouraging, hey? Because after using that generator for a whole week non-stop, there's still more than 46,000 rands worth of diesel in that tank still. In other words, we've got 4,688 liters left in the tank. Now, I think that was the end of that question, but I'm going to take it one step further, okay, and say this. What an examiner could also ask, and this is a question I would put in, okay, if my tank can hold or holds 5,024 liters, how many days would that last me? Yeah. So let's go for it. Well, I've got 5,024 liters. How many liters do I use in a day? Well, there are 24 hours in a day, and every hour I use 2 liters. So 24 times 2, 48. So if I say every day I use 48 liters, and I've got 5,024 liters, if I divide here, I'm going to work out how many days that tank's going to last me. So let's do that. Let's say if I got 5,024 liters, I divide it by 48 liters equals, it's going to say I am going to have just over 104 days. Sure. So we've done a lot of work here today, folk. We really have. Let's sum it up quickly. Let's go back to how we started. We said that a paper 2 consists of LO1, LO2, LO3, and LO4. In other words, everything you've done counts towards that question paper. And everything counts 25%. In other words, you can't say, I'm going to learn this bit, but I'm not going to learn that bit as much. You got to learn everything. Okay. The next thing we said was this, that it's a paper 2. Because it's a paper 2, we are dealing with a lot of reasoning and reflecting, and we're dealing with a lot of multi-step procedure type questions. 80% of that paper requires a lot of work and a lot of thinking. But remember what I said in the beginning. How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. How do I tackle a huge problem? I just tackle it little bit at a time. I solve this, I do this bit, I do that bit, I try and answer this, I try and answer that, and you know what? I'm picking up a mark here, picking up a mark there, I'm picking up just little bits of marks all the time, and that's the whole idea of this exam, to get as many marks as I possibly can. So never leave a question out. You always try something. Like I said, we've done so much work today. I think you guys are fantastic, having sat there for an hour and a half, non-stop, listening to this old croc talking non-stop. Okay, well done. It's been great chatting to you. I trust you've learned a lot, and I'm sure we'll meet again on the screen sometime. Cheers.